Well, we've got a great little story for you this morning as Brooks Koepka recently recounted learning a lesson about smack talk during a round of golf in South Florida with none other than Michael Jordan. Koepka told ESPN's Scott Van Pelt, "I was one up going to 17T. We'd been drawing all day and we have a 40-yard walk back to the 17th tee and he hasn't said much in the last couple of holes. I said something like, 'I've got you right where I want you,'" Koepka continued. He just teased the ball up, takes his practice swing and looks at me and says, "It's the fourth quarter, baby. I don't lose." And according to Brooks, MJ won the 17th and 18th holes to win the match. Koepka said, "It's probably the last time I've smack talked him," and probably quite right, Brooks Koepka. So Damon, the world is absolutely enamored with Michael Jordan all over again at the moment. You've had the absolute pleasure of covering MJ and now Brooks Koepka, of course, in golf. What's your biggest takeaway from this story?
That it's not a surprise at all, not an upset. You know, I interviewed Michael one time when I was a writer for the New York Times. I've spent time with Tiger. I've spent time with Jack. To me, Michael Jordan is the alpha male in sports, the most intense, competitive athlete that I've ever been around. His eyes are backlit. They're always on fire. He is always focused. He always wants to crush you. No surprise that Brooks Koepka is his latest victim.
He is just another breed of human. As you say, I don't think anyone ever compares to him. But Robert, we see smack talk a lot in other sports, but does it have a place in the professional game of golf?
Not really. It's an individual sport, and not that it doesn't have a place for it, just no one's any good at it. They don't grow up in such close quarters with their opponents as like a basketball player would. Basketball is where things like that thrive. I mean, you're a foot from your opponent's ear the whole time, so of course you've got to say something. The only time really during a tournament it ever happens is maybe when you're in 60th place on Sunday and you and whoever your playing partner is with are just making fun of each other for stinking it up that week. Otherwise, it doesn't surprise me that Jordan got the better of Brooks in that scenario. It's just Jordan's just made for that kind of thing, and golfers are not.
Paige, we've seen Brooks become a little bit more brash over recent years, calling Rory out for not winning a major since he's been on tour and confronting DeChambeau about slow play. What does this story tell you about the kind of person that Brooks Koepka is?
What's interesting is the story itself doesn't reveal a lot. Yes, Brooks is trying to needle MJ. MJ gets the better of him. What it says to me, though, is every player, athlete in any sport wants to be the guy that gets the last winning shot. Give me the ball, coach. Put me in, coach. They want to be that person. Brooks wants to be that guy, and he has been. He's been able to close. He's been able to take advantage of opportunity in big moments. What's revealing to me is that he's actually telling the story. He's showing a little bit of vulnerability. He's got a little bit of self-deprecation in there, and I actually think that the most revealing part of the story is that he told the story.
Well, Brooks Koepka likes to be the alpha male when it comes to any professional sport. But hey, when you're teaming up with Michael Jordan, I think we know who sits where in that pecking order. Okay, well, also on Tuesday, Brooks Koepka joined the Dan Patrick Show to weigh in on a number of topics, including his schedule. The world number 3 confirmed that he will be teeing it up when the PGA Tour returns to action at the Charles Schwab Challenge on June 11th. Koepka saying, quote, "I'm going to be there. I'm going to be ready. It's just exciting just to have something to look forward to, because it's one thing to just go play with your boys and it's completely another thing to actually go out and tee it up for the real thing." So Paige, I'll come to you first on this. I know Brooks Koepka is sort of renowned for just gearing himself up for those big weeks, for those big tournaments, but do you think we'll see a more motivated Koepka in the regular weeks now that he's had such a big break from the game?
I think you'll see a motivated Brooks Koepka. I think you'll see one that's appreciative of the opportunities that he has. It's hard not to. When the game's been taken away from you, whether it's by injury or in this case, taken away from everybody due to the pandemic, then it does create a sense of gratitude for those opportunities that you do have. So I actually think you're going to see a more focused Brooks on each and every week, maybe less gearing up towards the majors. Well, because there isn't that many in the near future. And I think it's a good thing for Brooks. I think it's good for all players to have that kind of perspective when they do return to the game.
Paige, I mildly agree with you. I do think he's going to be motivated early. Because it's going to feel like the biggest tournaments ever. He's going to be excited because he wasn't playing well and he wasn't, frankly, doing fantastic with his knee. He would allude to the fact that my knee's better, but it's never going to be 100%. So he has had all that time to let that pass and get out of his head. And he will be excited like everyone else to get there at a course that he's played well at. He finished second at Colonial in 2018 to Justin Rose. So yes, early on, he will be excited. He will be up for it. But at the end of the day, he's still Brooks Koepka. He's the man in the majors, and he just has trouble unless his game is firing on all cylinders in the other tournaments. And I frankly don't think it'll change, and I don't want it to change.
I think it's going to change a little bit, Robert, because he played at the worst level of golf that we've ever seen him play in his PGA Tour career before this pandemic, whether it's because of the injury or because of who knows what, perhaps a slight a drop in motivation. But his motivation should be at a peak right now. His number one ranking has been taken away from him. But I think this gap, this time off, it reminds me of 2018 when he missed the Masters and came back and won at Shinnecock Hills. The game had been taken away from him then. It's been taken away from him now. But he also has the added motivation of Rory McIlroy and the fact that he just wasn't playing good golf before this pandemic began.
Yeah, Damon, I expect that it's going to be a hungry Brooks Koepka. And you mentioned it or alluded to it, the fact that he hasn't been playing well, and he's been very honest about that in a way that we've never seen before from Brooks. No excuses. He was able to say with very, very much clarity that, hey, I'm not playing my best golf right now. So I think Rory's motivating, and don't forget Tiger Woods, after he won the Masters, gave Brooks a little needling too, saying we're even now on major championships.
There's certainly a sense that what we've seen from Brooks Koepka so far this year, he hasn't even got his season started. So to see him at Colonial would be fascinating to see what kind of form that he's in. Well, he also weighed in with Dan Patrick on some other topics, including looking ahead to November with the Masters. And Koepka saying, quote, "It's going to be so cold, balls aren't going to be flying as far. Every par 5 basically plays into the wind from what I've been told. It's going to change the golf course. I think you'll see scores around even par instead of that 12, 15 under that you've been accustomed to. And I think it could really affect the back nine," end quote. So when you think of a grinded out type of Masters, Robert, is Brooks Koepka the player that comes to mind when you think of those kind of conditions?
Of course. I think mentally he can grind it out better than anyone on the toughest of conditions under the brightest spotlight. He just doesn't have a level to where he gets uncomfortable. The more important and the more difficult the situation is, the more likely the other players are to fold. The way that Jack Nicklaus used to say, I don't have to beat everybody. Most of them are going to beat themselves. I think that Brooks doesn't have that I'm going to beat myself mentality. So if he's right, and let's face it, we don't know, November in Augusta could be, a lot of different ways. It could be kind of warm. It can be freezing cold. It can be very breezy. So he's really just kind of guessing. But no matter what the situation, until further notice, Brooks is the man in the majors. So, yes, it's going to favor him.
If Brooks has taught us anything in his career, it's that he's a man of all seasons in the majors. He can win at double-digit under par. He won at 1 over par at Shinnecock Hills. He hits a heavy ball, a big ball, hits it a long way. He's a grinder. He's tough. He's comfortable when other players are uncomfortable. I think you could put a major on the moon, and Brooks Koepka would have a way to find his self playing into contention.
I think the key point that I took away from this conversation is really just that Brooks Koepka is already thinking ahead and mentally preparing for a more difficult major championship. He's already got that in his sights and is preparing for what he thinks that is going to play like. To me, I'm looking forward to the fact that he's so excited to be teeing it up once again, even though the conditions are going to be different. And maybe from his perspective, he feels like the more difficult the challenge, the better he's going to perform.